4 billion years ago, Earth was entirely unrecognizable. It was a silent, endless sphere of deep, dark water. The violent, fiery chaos of its birth had finally died down, leaving behind a completely flooded planet. From space, there were no green continents or familiar coastlines. There was absolutely no landmass protruding above the waves. Just a dark, global ocean covering the entire world. A planet utterly swallowed by its own seas. The catastrophic meteor bombardments had finally ceased. The massive, close-orbiting moon controlled the endless tides. And from the surface, the world seemed perfectly peaceful. A quiet, rolling expanse of empty water. But beneath the crushing weight of the global ocean, a massive geological time bomb was quietly ticking. The Earth's solid rocky crust was completely sealed shut, acting exactly like the lid of a global pressure cooker. Deep inside the planet, the iron core was a nuclear furnace, powered by the intense decay of radioactive isotopes. This heat churned the molten mantle in massive convection currents, generating unimaginable amounts of upward kinetic energy. This extreme thermal energy had absolutely nowhere to go. It pushed aggressively against the underside of the solid ocean floor, trapped beneath miles of heavy, freezing, high-pressure water. The strain on the Earth's crust began to multiply. The thick basalt rock began to violently groan and warp, bending upward under the sheer force of the mantle's heat. The physical pressure pushing from beneath the waves became mathematically impossible for the rock to withstand. Spiderwebs of glowing microfractures began to spread, tearing across millions of square miles of the ocean floor. The integrity of the planet's outer shell was failing, and the pressure was seconds away from a catastrophic release. And then, the solid shell of the Earth finally snapped. A massive, jagged fault line tore across the entire globe, exposing the fiery, churning mantle directly to the freezing sea, sending shockwaves of superheated steam into the abyss. With the explosive force of millions of nuclear warheads, the Earth was no longer a single, solid sphere. Crust shattered into massive, independent slabs of rock. This was the violent birth of the tectonic plates. The planet was now a chaotic jigsaw puzzle of jagged stone, floating freely on top of a turbulent sea of liquid magma. These massive plates began to drift across the globe, grinding against each other with terrifying, world-shaking force. These fractured tectonic boundaries became active global war zones. When two massive plates collided, they didn't just stop. One plate was forcefully dragged deep beneath the other, a violent, destructive geological process known as subduction. As that cold, wet ocean rock was dragged into the fiery mantle, the extreme heat and trapped water caused a chemical reaction. It melted and transformed into something entirely new, creating a lighter, highly explosive type of magma, granite. This new granite magma was incredibly light and buoyant. It refused to stay buried in the dense mantle below. It violently punched its way back up through the heavy crust, creating massive, explosive magma chambers beneath the sea. These chambers ruptured, creating massive underwater volcanoes, spewing billions of tons of black ash and glowing lava, boiling the surrounding ocean water instantly in contact, piling layer upon layer of cooled stone into the abyss. Millions of these underwater volcanoes erupted simultaneously, forming massive glowing chains of fire along the tectonic fault lines, building immense geological foundations on the ocean floor. The architecture of a brand new world was being laid down. For millions of years, these volcanic mountains continued to grow. Eruption after eruption piled new rock onto the peaks, reaching blindly upward through the pitch-black water, until eventually, they breached the absolute limits of the ocean. They pierced the surface of the rolling global waves, surrounded by boiling water and choking sulfuric steam. For the very first time in our planet's long history, solid ground had finally appeared beneath the sky. These barren, toxic islands were the physical seeds of our world, the absolute earliest jagged foundations of the continents. They were not tropical paradises. They were completely, terrifyingly hostile to all forms of life. And they were not stationary, driven by the endless churning conveyor belt of plate tectonics. These isolated islands were pushed forcefully across the globe, floating on the molten mantle like massive rafts of stone. Eventually, the tectonic conveyor belts forced them to intersect. Island chains violently smashed into one another. The continental rock buckled, folded, and thrust violently upward, forging the very first jagged mountain ranges on Earth. As more landmasses collided, they fused together entirely, forming massive unbroken stretches of thick continental crust. The very first supercontinents were being permanently drawn on the map, a landscape made entirely of sharp, lifeless black rock. Scientists call one of these earliest great landmasses Valbara. It was a bleak, terrifying, and unimaginably massive supercontinent. There was no dirt, no sand, and absolutely no vegetation. Just millions of square miles of jagged, sharp volcanic basalt. It sounds like a myth, but the physical evidence remains today. When geologists study the magnetic alignment of ancient rocks, they find the ghost of Valbara hidden deep underground. Its shattered remains are buried beneath modern South Africa and Australia. But this newly formed supercontinent was far from quiet. It was home to the most violent volcanic eruptions in planetary history. Massive fissures tore open the black rock constantly, venting the extreme pressure from the mantle below. These supervolcanoes pumped millions of tons of gas into the air. There was absolutely zero breathable oxygen on Earth yet. Instead, the sky was choked with methane, sulfur, and carbon dioxide, turning the atmosphere into a terrifying, hazy, toxic orange. At this time, the young sun was much weaker than it is today. Without this thick blanket of volcanic greenhouse gases, the Earth's oceans would have frozen entirely solid. The toxic smog actually kept the planet warm enough to remain liquid. But this extreme atmosphere birthed a new kind of weather. The heavy sulfur and carbon dioxide mixed with the water vapor, creating massive global storm systems that blotted out the light and unleashed a relentless, devastating chemical attack. From that toxic orange sky, something devastating fell. A relentless, global storm of highly acidic rain. It hammered the barren black continents without mercy, pouring down continuously for millions of uninterrupted years. This acid rain was a powerful, global chemical weapon. As it hit the volcanic basalt, it triggered massive chemical weathering. It began to slowly, aggressively dissolve the solid rock, breaking down the tough exterior of the supercontinent. The rainwater pooled together, gaining incredible momentum, carving out the very first winding, jagged rivers on Earth, slashing deep, permanent canyons into the black stone, and acting as massive, unstoppable chemical conveyor belts. As these ancient rivers raged across the continental stone, they stripped vast amounts of vital raw minerals from the land. Iron, magnesium, heavy salts, and zinc were chemically unlocked, washed away from the rock and carried swiftly downstream. Millions of tons of these dissolved, heavy nutrients were dumped directly into the ancient, empty global ocean, spreading outward from the jagged coastlines of Valbara and fundamentally altering the chemical makeup of the sea. The Archean Ocean was no longer just a body of empty water. The acid rain had aggressively seasoned the seas, transforming the oceans into a highly complex, mineral-rich soup, packed with all the heavy elements necessary to build complex structures. And meanwhile, the shifting tectonic plates were finishing the job. As they pulled apart, they ripped massive trenches into the ocean floor, opening up massive abyssal rifts miles beneath the waves, creating the most extreme, highly pressurized environments on the planet. Down in the absolute, crushing darkness of these abyssal trenches, where no sunlight could ever possibly reach the bottom, the heavy, mineral-rich ocean water seeped deep into the cracked crust and came into direct, physical contact with the boiling mantle below. The ocean water was instantly superheated to over 700 degrees. But because the crushing pressure of the ocean was so immense, the water was physically prevented from boiling into steam. Instead, it became a super solvent, absorbing even more raw chemicals. This volatile, superheated fluid was forced aggressively back upward, shooting out of the ocean floor like a dark, underwater geyser, blasting heavy, sulfur-rich black smoke into the freezing abyss, creating the Earth's very first hydrothermal vents. As this superheated, chemical-rich fluid hit the freezing deep sea, the dissolved minerals instantly cooled and crystallized, piling up to form towering, alien-looking rock chimneys, pumping raw geothermal energy directly into the dark water. Entire fields of these towering, smoking chimneys formed in the dark, a perfect, highly isolated combination of extreme heat and minerals, trapped in an incredibly stable, high-pressure underwater environment, far away from the chaotic meteor strikes and toxic atmosphere above, while the surface of the Earth remained a toxic, barren wasteland. Down here in the dark, the conditions were mathematically perfect. The continents had dumped their minerals into the water, and the tectonic plates had provided the extreme geothermal heat. The planet had accidentally engineered a massive chemical incubator. Raw dead chemistry was mixing endlessly in the deep. Complex molecules were being forced together by intense thermal energy, creating long, complicated chains of raw amino acids. The oceans had been completely salted and filled with raw fuel. The extreme geothermal heat was acting as a continuous spark, and billions of dead chemical reactions were happening every single second, waiting for a single, mathematically impossible combination. In a world entirely hostile to our modern understanding of existence, the perfect primordial recipe had been completely assembled, trapped in the pitch-black abyss, sheltered from the orange sky. The raw ingredients for biology were finally in place. Dead rock, toxic gas, and extreme heat had built a cradle. And deep within the hydrothermal trenches of the Archean Ocean, the ultimate threshold of the universe was about to be crossed. A world made entirely of stone was preparing to wake up. The violent era of shifting continents and cracking crusts had finished its job. The stage for the greatest event in planetary history was set, and in the crushing depths, the primordial soup simply boiled, waiting for the spark.